High demand for specific ethnicities: Asian, East Indian, Jewish, Mediterranean, Middle Eastern.
I just very much had the altruistic piece of me triggered.
And she's going to look at that and say, that's a lot of money.
USA is the world's main exporter of human plasma with 70% of the world market. This is the other side of the American dream. Masses of poor people willing to sell their blood.
Women ages 21 to 29, they're not thinking about their fertility or risks.
Eggs are being bought with all of the risks that follow from that.
If you're tall, attractive, physically fit, and have a desire to help, and what person doesn't want to see themselves that way?
COVID-19 has played a key role in increasing human and kidney trafficking. People have lost livelihoods and have no jobs, but they need money to survive. Traffickers see this as an opportunity to mislead people who are in economically hard situations.
To see your daughter, who's not pregnant, and stomach look like she's 6 months pregnant, it was awful.
And I'm mad at the fact that people are out there wanting to take advantage of someone who is young or healthy and wanting to help.
And it says right here, make a difference today, donate your eggs. It makes it sound like it's this, act of benevolence.
Both Kylie and Calla suffered a stroke. Alexandra lost an ovary. Cindy almost bled to death. And Linda and Latoya were both hospitalized with ovarian hyperstimulation syndrome.
Hey guys, it's me Lavender here, and today I'm going to be doing the body part files, aka the pure evil, the blood plasma, egg trade, organ, black market files, etc. So how capitalism and poverty fuels the black market of human organs and other body areas and body parts. Illicit traders prey on the homeless and those stuck in debt traps to push them into black market of human organs. Illegal transplants of organs, especially kidneys, are a nationwide phenomenon all over the world and across the earth. These rackets prey on poor people reeling from debt and desperation. There are blood farms in India, the human egg trade in Cyprus, the spike in kidney sales in post-tsunami Indonesia, and impoverished people also in India. Every year, several $1 billion worth of human fragments and fluids exchange hands in exchanges that are often as not illegal, aka black markets. According to a report, the illegal global trade in human organs generates profits between $600 million and $1.2 billion per year, making it a prime black market with money to be made in those industries. We typically envision this transfer from healthy to the sick, but in reality, it is just as often a transfer from the poor to the wealthy. Consequently, new biotechnologies and their underlying economic judicial systems will have a large part to play in the unfolding of international and national social orders. The U.S. blood plasma industry has grown significantly in recent years, from just over $5 billion in global sales in 2000 to over $21 billion in 2017. According to market research engine forecast, the industry is on track to cross $44 billion by 2024. Just because someone gives up their blood to a place like the Red Cross doesn't mean that the Red Cross won't sell that blood to the highest bidder. There's a real double standard in all the body part business, where so-called volunteer tissue is still incredibly profitable. The situation is only exacerbated by the fact that the medical establishment anonymously tissues the blood donors in order to protect their identities. The problem with that is it also has protection, is that it provides a fantastic cover for criminals who use source flesh unethically or illegally. In the case of Grover, one particularly heinous crime happened when a man started kidnapping people from a railway station and keeping them locked up in iron sheds behind his house. He drained them of a couple liters of blood until they were minimally conscious. He kept them as a cash cow, and just like a cow, draining a pint of blood every week or so. He made a lot of money that way, and when the cops finally busted him and found 17 men in his custody, survivors, said that many others had died in his hands. The cruel cost of the human egg trade. British women and American women who desperately want to have babies are being sent to Eastern Europe and Cyprus. Their clinics are thriving on the profits of fertility tourism, but donors in the egg harvest run hidden health risks at the expense of, all of this. A victim of capitalism story from Europe, the victim Savinia didn't know is that donating eggs is not a straightforward matter like donating sperm, like a sperm bank. It can be a lengthy, painful, and potentially dangerous procedure involving the injection of a powerful drug known as follicle-stimulating hormone, or FSH. Medical experts believe 1% of women undergoing this can suffer serious side effects known as ovarian hyperstimulation syndrome that in extreme cases can be proved fatal and cause death. One leading British fertility expert, Adam, professor of reproductive medicine at Leeds General Hospital, believes the fact that Savinia, the victim, produced 40 eggs is evidence that she was being hyperstimulated by the clinic and her health was being put at risk. At no time did the medical staff at the Kiev clinic explain anything to Sylvania or give her any counseling on the psychological impact of donating eggs. Sylvania found out she was being injected with hormones only on the fourth time she had to be put on a drip. She was told the injections were to clean her blood. Other complications included missing her period for 2 months and stomach pains. An investigation by the Observer had revealed a bargaining global trade in women's eggs where infertile British women who cannot find a donor in the UK will pay thousands of pounds for the chance of finding one overseas. Between 1996 and 1999, an Israeli doctor named Zion bin Rafal began stealing eggs from his patients by doping them with hormones without their consent. In one case, he stole 181 eggs from a single unknown donor and implemented them in 34 of his paying patients. In the course of his tincture, 13 women are hospitalized because of massive doses of hormones he administered. Onto the blood, our most personal substance. Our blood has become a commodity, a substance trade for profit at the expense of the most vulnerable population. Hundreds of plasma extraction centers. It consists of a network of hundreds of plasma extraction centers deliberately built in the economically disadvantaged neighborhoods, towns, and cities. Places like Flint, Michigan, and Rexburg, Idaho, and El Paso, Texas are just some of the examples. Places where companies know people need the money and are in debt and might do something a little unpleasant to get it. The centers prey on the vulnerable people of society. They draw in more people of color because they're often built in the places where most people aren't white. It is an industry that takes advantage of the systematic racism and economic inequalities in the United States. The plasma industry has done all of this without too many people in power taking notice, in large part because the practice doesn't affect the lives of the comfortable among us, aka the wealthy. Even though we have millions of people in America who sell their blood plasma, either as a temporary fix or a long-term income, we don't know what it does to their bodies. Absent robust, independent scientific studies, there are endless accounts of stories of fainting, being too weak to work, bruises, of feeling like they're recovering from the flu, many side effects. Medical science offers almost no data on the long-term effects of donorship, but we still have collectively decided it's fine for people who are broke to sell their blood twice a week for as long as possible. It's in the capitalist corporation's best interest to keep the science murky. If we knew more about the negative effects and, the health effects and side effects, perhaps big pharma companies would have fewer donations to fill the giant pool of plasma, and they don't want, that to happen. In 2008, Harry Katmat, an impoverished Austrian from the state of Bagar, was rescued along with 16 other people from a blood farm in the town of Grofer, close to India's border with Nepal. The victims, all poor migrants, were lured to a house on the pretext of being given jobs and were then convinced to sell their blood for the premium sum of $7 per unit. But when I met Hari Kamat in the hospital recuperating, he said after a while they became too weak to resist, and when they had the energy to try to escape, they were beaten and locked back up. Hardy and the others were forced to give blood 3 times per week for a period of 2.5 years. The Red Cross says donors should give blood once every 8 to 12 weeks. They were never paid the amount they were promised and received only a token sum. Ms. Digalet says the blood was then sold to local hospitals and blood banks for $18 a unit, 15 times the government rate. Some private blood banks were accused of being compliant in this, putting official stamps and barcodes on these packs of blood. The National Thealista Welfare Society estimates that 6 to 8% of its own patients contract diseases including HIV through transfusions. Professional donors are usually drawn from India's impoverished population and are at a higher risk of HIV, hepatitis, and other diseases. In 2013, the asthmatic children died, and 21 others were diagnosed with HIV after a single unlicensed blood bank was found to be transfusing patients without testing. In Junath Jarat reported the Indian Journal of Medical Ethics. When it comes to more, true crime cases, so like the blood industry, when Bayer's Cutter Laboratories realized that their blood products, factor VIII and IX, or anti-hemophilic factor AHF, were contaminated with HIV virus, the financial investment in the product was considered too high to destroy the inventory. So they knowingly went on, using the products, and in 1997, Bayer paid a $300 million lawsuit to a composition fund for hemophiliacs with HIV. About 20,000 patients from this contracted HIV from the blood. And in 2003, scandals of the Red Cross, a federal court frustrated by the repeated blood safety violations by the Red Cross, gave the FDA the power to fine the organization $46 million in penalties later. Many of the same violations, understaffing, ineffective screening of donors, failure to recall infected blood, are outlined in the recent letter to the FDA sent to the Executive Vice President of Biomedical Services for the Red Cross. Since the emergence of renal transplantation in India in the 1970s, the country has emerged as a notorious black market for organs. 20% of India's population lives below the poverty line, a situation that has probably been aggravated by COVID-19 related job losses and impoverishment, since capitalism is an inhumane system with atrocities on a daily basis going on underneath the system. New Delhi police received a tip-off about a illegal kidney transplant racket operating from a private laboratory in Hazkaz, a upscale residential and commercial area in the city. Sources said the gang had been operating the racket, offered Rs 1 through 3 lakh to homeless people to donate one of their kidneys. By the time the police set a trap and nabbed the suspects on May 26, the gang had allegedly already performed 20 such illegal donations. Chatterjee provides a chilling picture of the modus operation of organ trading rackets, scouting small towns and city slums to lure people in need of money. The touts particularly preferred the slums, a goldmine for organ traders, where the underprivileged, surviving in appalling living conditions, hope to uplift themselves by selling their kidneys. 13-year-old Shadida, a victim of capitalism, has seen many of her family members sell their kidneys for small amounts of money in efforts to ward off crushing poverty or debts. In Nepal, Sharida said her uncle sold his kidney for only $300. Another victim in 2022 is the 19-year-old Santosh. We'll never forget. Santosh had dreams of improving his life for the better, seeking work outside his rural village in Nepal as a migrant worker. His life did change, but only for the worse. Santosh is now half the man he used to be after losing one of his 2 kidneys to an organ trafficking ring in Nepal. He was quoted in saying, "I never thought my life would come to this. I can barely walk. I faint easily, can no longer lift heavy objects," he said. He was the only member of his family of 6 who earned an income of any kind. The work he did was a small farm of less than 13 acres in the Newton district of central Nepal, made him barely enough to get by. "I have 4 sisters and a mother back home, 6 mouths to feed and no money. I was desperate for this new job," he said. In Jamdi village other home has at least one person who has sold their kidney in the past due to financial need. That desperation made him an easy target for these, organ traffickers. Upon arriving in New Delhi, he said he was told he needed to get his blood test as part of the new job requirement. He said he had no idea what was being done to him at the hospital. They asked me to say yes to whatever the doctor asked, so I did. The doctor didn't probe further. He said Santosh woke up after surgery with acute pain in his stomach and was horrified to see the scar that is now a lifetime long-lasting reminder of what was stolen from him. Santosh told the NewsHour that after the surgery, the traffickers handed him $4,500 for his stolen kidney, a kidney most likely to be sold to a rich buyer willing to pay to jump the line for an organ transplant. He was given medicine and sent back to Nepal. When he was back home, he was once again jobless, still poor, and now also with chronic deficiency and in chronic pain. For several weeks, Santosh was bedridden. He could no longer work at his farm. So now he works at a small tea shop, earning less than $2 a day. His stomach still hurts every time he bends. He's no longer the healthy young man he once was. Another victim of capitalism story has said, "My older son gave his kidney a few years back. He used to work as a construction worker. Now he struggles with life. He's weaker and gets sick easily," said 69-year-old Callie, who asked to be identified by her first name in fear of being publicly shamed. She said her son received less than $500 for his kidney. Another victim of this organ trafficking case, a kidney from a 19-year-old community college student, Jae Hun, an immigrant from South Korea who cannot afford his tuition, books, room, and board, and who feared deportation if he dropped out. The deal was secured for $20,000 the night before the transplant. A few days later, Jun Han reported that he was still in bed, immobilized with pain, and unable to eat, urinate, or defecate. His older brother, a surly young man who worked as a dishwasher in a fast food chain restaurant, was angry with him. He had no medical insurance, and the $20,000 which he had been handed over to his brother for in a public toilet on the surgical ward was already all but gone after settling unpaid bills along with student tuition debts and remittances for their parents in Korea. After a few brief calls, Jae-hun's phone went dead. Male kidney sellers tend to minimize the trauma they experience to protect their pride, but their reserve often crumbles under the gentle but probing questioning of how their lives have been affected by this. Some male sellers in Moldova denied that they were trafficked because the language of trafficking made them sound like female prostitutes, a stigma they cannot live with. Others became obsessed with kidney sale and attribute all the misfortunes that occurred before or since that one act of stupidity. Among a group of 40 Moldovan kidney sellers, we followed them from 2001 to 2009. There were deaths from suicide, failure of the remaining kidney, and even from battering by angry villagers who felt that the sellers had disgraced their village. Some were banished from their homes and completely disappeared. Prosecutions are difficult. In most instances, a few culprits, usually low-ranking brokers or kidney sellers, are convicted, but the surgeons, without whom no organ trafficking crimes can be facilitated, and the hospital administrators often escape pleading ignorance. The famous Netcare case in Durban, South Africa is a case in point. A total of 109 illicit transplants were performed at St. Augustine's Hospital, including 5 in which the donors were minors. A police sting resulted in several plea bargains from various brokers and their accomplices. Netcare, the largest medical corporation in South Africa, pleaded guilty to have facilitated the transplants. The immediate result of the plummeting of Netcare stocks. Because human trafficking for organs is seen to benefit some very sick people at the expense of less visible or dispensable people, a lot of prosecutors and judges have treated it as a victimless crime. Another victim, a war destroyed his home, so he packed up and decided to leave Syria, the area, and immigrate to Iraq a year ago in search of a new life and in hope of rebuilding his house and treating his young child who has heart disease. After the 30-year-old collected $10,000 in Iraq, he was robbed by his employer, but he could not report it because he feared getting held legally accountable, especially since his residency permit had expired and he had not renewed it. A man found his answer in donating one of his kidneys for $10,000 so he can not return to his family empty-handed. A man met the broker a while ago and underwent all the necessary tests and examinations in the span of 12 days to make sure his body would be a match. Only after the operation did the horrified realization that had really happened set in. After I sold my kidney, it turned out that I had actually received fake money and fraudulent money. I only found out after the operation when I tried to spend some of it. Recently, a gruesome bill had asked prisoners to give up organs to get out a few months early. Prisoners in Massachusetts may be soon forced to choose between their organs and their freedom. Democratic legislators in the state are proposing a law that will allow prisoners to donate organs or bone marrow in exchange for up to a year off their sentence. We all know that American prisons are misery, so they are preying on the vulnerable of society. There is a long history in the medical field of doctors experimenting and abusing prisoners, including in Massachusetts in 1942. A professor at Harvard Medical School injected 64 Massachusetts prisoners with cow's blood as part of a World War II military research experiment, killing one of the subjects.